welcome to my Flagstaff home. Today, as you can see from the title of this video, I'm talking about my garden and the good, the bad, and the ugly. It is about the, well, not quite the middle of September right now. Where I live, the growing season is very short, and so we really have about 2 weeks left until we should be getting freezing temperatures at night. And so I thought I would just do a kind of a summer in review on the things that happened in my garden. There were some things that were really great, there were some things that were like eh, and then there were some things that happened in my garden that weren't good at all, which is why I called it the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's start with the good. One good thing that happened in my garden this year is that I had just tons of tomatoes. I grew 3 San Marzano tomatoes, I grew 1 Anna Russian tomato, 3 black Krim tomatoes, and 1 black cherry tomato. So I just had a jungle of tomatoes. A lot of people like to trim back their tomatoes and so that they're not as jungly as mine are. If you've seen some of my other videos of my garden, you've seen how much of a jungle I have. But we get these freak hailstorms here, and if I don't have a lot of leaves to protect my tomato plants, then the tomatoes will just get battered. So I just feel like having it leafy is good protection. I got hundreds of tomatoes. They're still out on the vine. I've harvested some. Some of them I've harvested red. Most of them I will end up harvesting green because we have such a short growing season that they don't have enough time. And I'm gonna do another video about how I ripen up those green tomatoes. It's not just putting them in a windowsill. So it's actually a way that makes them taste better. So watch for that in the coming weeks. But anyway, so I had tons and tons of tomatoes, and I'll be picking all of those off of here off of there in just a few weeks when I start seeing that the temperatures are looking like they're going to go down towards 32 degrees. Then let's see, what else did I have that was good? I had in the beginning of the summer and middle of the summer, I had quite a good crop of peas and snap peas. I've grown snap peas before. I hadn't grown peas, regular peas in the past. Had quite a good crop of those. I was out there pretty much every day harvesting those things. We ate snap peas, of course, fresh. We had peas that we were shelling and sometimes putting in salads and sometimes just cooking them as a side dish. I have some that I froze in Ziploc bags, and so got a really good harvest of those things earlier in the summer. I'll have to tell you what happened to that. Well, then let's see, the squash. I had a few squash plants that got really big, and they were producing, patty pans, zucchini, just lots of stuff. I was going out there every day. You saw probably a video I did on eating stuffed squash blossoms, and so we did that a few times, and they produced really well. I got one squash that was 2 feet long, literally. It wasn't gigantically fat. It was like the size of a normal good size zucchini, but it was seriously like this long and grew that way in about 2 days. One day it was like this and about this big around, and next thing you know, it's this big, huge thing. So yeah, got some good squash there. My greens did really well. They do well in the early summer, and then when it gets hotter, they bolt, which means that they go to a flower really fast, and once they do that, they're gonna be bitter. They do that in the warm temperatures. They don't like warm temperatures. And then when it starts cooling off again, they like that. So I planted my lettuce and my other kinds of greens in succession. And so I always had some greens out there to go get. Those did really well. I'm actually starting more because the temperatures are getting cooler and they will withstand some of those freezing temperatures within reason. I planted chard. That went really well. I haven't harvested much of that. A few of the plants are getting to the point where they're nice and big and ready to harvest. Some of them are still growing. Planted some radishes. They're doing great. And I'm trying to think. Yeah, that's probably it on the good. Okay, let's talk about the bad. So, and we've got the ugly too. So, all right, so one of the bad things there really wasn't anything I can say that was so bad about my tomatoes, except for one of my San Marzanos just didn't grow as tall and vigorous as the others. I don't know why. But you know, with planting as many tomato plants as I did, if one of them just didn't get as tall and as bushy, then that's okay. In my squash bed, some of my squash just stayed really tiny. I'm not really sure why. So yeah, that wasn't so great. Some of them stayed small and then all of a sudden got big. And I still have one out there that's just kind of teeny. It's trying to grow a squash, but it's not doing very well. So, so that was the, I guess, not so good. Let me think. Oh, my radishes got something eating them at some point, but it didn't decimate the whole crop, so they're still growing. And is that it? Yeah, I guess that's it. Okay, then let's talk about the ugly. In my tomato bed, just a few weeks ago, my plants got blossom end rot. And that means that, like, here's the vine, right? And here's the tomato, and this is the blossom end. And all of a sudden you start noticing the bottom of this beautiful green tomato just starts turning brown. And there's no hope for the tomato at that point. So I kind of freaked out because I saw it on one plant, just one tomato at first. Okay, maybe that was just a fluke. And then pretty soon I probably lost about 25 or 30 tomatoes. So you can't just let it go or you could lose your whole entire crop. Blossom end rot is caused by one of two things in my understanding. The first is inconsistent watering, and the second is a lack of calcium in the soil. I wasn't thinking that I had inconsistent watering, and so I took care of the calcium issue. I will also link the video below where I talked about a quick fix for blossom end rot, and it really did seem to help. Got a few more tomatoes that had blossom end rot on it after that, but everything's holding steady right now, so that's good. But boy, oh boy, was I thinking I was gonna lose my entire crop. In fact, at one point, I went ahead and pulled a whole bunch of tomatoes when they were green off of my San Marzano plants, because those seemed to be the ones that were the worst hit. And I just pulled them green because I figured they'll ripen up. It might be better if they can ripen up on the vine, but most of my tomatoes get picked before they're ripe anyway, so I figured I might as well go ahead and pull those to prevent them from getting blossom end rot. I have lots more tomatoes growing and they're not getting that right now, so that's good, but it was ugly. All right, another thing that was ugly in my garden beds where I was growing peas and snap peas. First of all, at one point in July, they started to get a little bit of powdery mildew, not too bad. They were continuing to produce just fine. And then all of a sudden, about 3 weeks ago maybe, my plants started really dying, just getting just crispy leaves, just turning brown, and I couldn't figure it out. And then I realized that my cat Mary was peeing in the peas. Well, of course, you know, it's gonna torch those things. Wasn't much I could do. I mean, there's not much you can do about keeping a cat out of a place that they've chosen as a litter box. So what I've decided to do next year is that I'm going to put down some chicken wire, bend the ends of it so I can shove it down into the dirt, and then the peas will grow right up through it, and Mary won't like feeling wire on her paws and she won't be able to dig. So yeah, that was kind of ugly. But I did get a good harvest out of them earlier in the summer, so that was at least one good thing. The ugly on my squash plants is that a few weeks ago they started getting powdery mildew. This has happened in the past in my garden and typically happens when we're going into our more rainy season in the summer, starting in July and into August. So I've used in the past a copper fungicide, it's called. You can get it at nurseries, probably Home Depot, and you're supposed to spray it on the leaves, the top of the leaves and the underside of the leaves, about 2 weeks before you typically start to get powdery mildew in your garden. Well, I didn't do it this year, and I didn't because we were getting inconsistent rain, and so I was watering my plants at the base. I don't water on top of them because that will bring that about too. But I just figured because we weren't getting slammed with a whole lot of rain that they wouldn't get powdery mildew, but they did. And by the time they got it, I've been treating it, but I've had to cut off some of the leaves that were really covered with it, and it just spreads. It spreads from one leaf to the next, from one plant to the next, And I've been doing my best to stay on top of it. We only have a couple weeks left of the growing season. It's probably slowed down the growth of the zucchini a little bit, but that was one of the things that just, didn't work out. And then I would say for the last thing that was ugly is my cucumbers. I grew one cucumber plant so I could make some pickles, and it just never grew more than about this big. It had a few leaves, and it grew one cucumber. I don't know why, just one. And then I had another cucumber plant that was called a Mexican mini watermelon. And they make little mini cucumbers that look like watermelon. And I got one, and then the whole plant got powdery mildew. Lesson learned. Whether I think they're going to get powdery mildew or not, I need to treat those things when they're still in good shape and don't have any of that. And then hopefully I will avoid this in the future. So I don't want to leave this on a bad note, because overall I think I had a really successful year in my garden. Like I said, tons of tomatoes, lots of squash, some good peas earlier on, my greens, all of that kind of stuff did really well. And so I'm happy with how the season turned out. I've got ideas for what I'm going to do differently next year, but things went pretty well. But I hope your gardening season went well. I will be sharing with you, of course, some of my thoughts about my next year's garden. And I kind of do that. I have this thing I call them dreams of green when we're in the middle of winter and I'm just, pining away, hoping that we're gonna get an early summer. We never do. But I'm just thinking about my garden and getting into all that kind of stuff. So I'll be sharing some of those things with you, some of the seeds that I choose for next year, and all of that. So I have other things I'll be talking about on my Flagstaff home. I'll still be talking about preserving some of the harvest, and then we'll get into stuff that I like to do in the winter around my Flagstaff home. So I hope that you'll come along with me for that. If you're not currently subscribed to my channel, just hit that button. YouTube will let you know when I upload new videos. So take care, you guys, and we'll see you again. Bye-bye.